For those that don't know me, my name is Steve Robertson. I am an MCC pastor, but I'm also a member here at All God's Children, and it's always an honor to speak before you. On a more somber note, this week has been a difficult week. With the shooting in El Paso at that mall with over 20 people who have now died. It's one of the largest mass shootings in our nation. And then this morning, we heard in Dayton, Ohio, there was another mass shooting where 9 people have died. I don't even know what my heart says other than I ache this morning. Because what is happening is nothing less than domestic terrorism that is being fed by an unhealthy understanding of nationalism. And we as a community, as a church, as a believer, followers of Jesus, we've got to say no more. We've got to be calling our offices in DC and say no. As a Christian community, we can't have this any longer. So we keep those families, even though I don't know those families, I know today is a day of mourning for them. And as our hearts go out, let's continue to keep them in our thoughts and prayers. A couple of weeks ago, I invited each of you in my sermon to visit a lemonade stand. For those of you that were here, remember that? This morning, I'm going to have you imagine a game show, if you will. Attending a game show perhaps isn't your idea of an activity you want to be a participant of, but we're going to pretend your family wants you to go, your spouse wants you to go, your boyfriend wants you to go, your girlfriend wants you to go, and so you give in and you go to the game show. And now that you're in the audience, you're beginning to enjoy it. The studio frenzy is contagious. The music is upbeat. The stage is colorful. The stakes are high. The show host comes out from the left side of the stage and says, "Ladies and gentlemen, the price has never been higher than it's ever been. Welcome to The Price is Right." You lean over to your partner, whispering in his or her ear, "Do you think his hair is real?" Then he announces the pot. $10 million. The audience needs no prompting. They explode in applause and they explode in cheers. "It's the richest game show in the history of humankind," the host beams. "Somebody here today will walk out of here with a check for $10 million. Wow, you think. I wish that would be me. But you know in the back of your mind, you've never really had any kind of luck when it comes to lotteries or game shows, so why would today be different? Shh, people around you start to say, shh. Another person says they're about to draw a name. And suddenly, in an instant, those around you shriek, and suddenly you realize your name has been called. You're about to go from spectator to player. Your partner grabs you, gives you a kiss. Your friends around you give you hugs. Screams are heard, and 1,000 eyes watch as the beautiful show assistant takes your hand and walks you up onto the stage. "Open the curtain," the host commands. You turn and you watch as the curtains open and you gasp at the sight. A bright red wheelbarrow full of money, overflowing with money. The same lady that walked you up on stage now pushes you towards the wheelbarrow, parking you right in front of all that money. "Have you ever seen $10 million? The pearly-toothed host asks. No, not that much money. The audience laughs nervously with you. Well, 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 the host exclaims. Go ahead. Dive in. And you look at the audience. You make eye contact with your loved ones. Some of them have started to drool. Another is praying. One has their fingers crossed. Your partner has both thumbs up. How can you refuse? So you burrow in, up over your shoulders, and you rise up clutching $100 bills. It can all be yours. It can all be yours. The choice is up to you, if the price is right. Applause fills the hall once again. Behind you, a second curtain opens, revealing a very large placard. What are you willing to give up? The host explains the rules. All you have to do in order to get this $10 million is to agree to one of these conditions, and you will receive all the money. $10 million, you whisper to yourself. Not one, not two, $10 million. No small sum. Nice nest egg, you think to yourself. Think of the good that you could do with this money. Shoot. You could build the new addition to the church. $10 million would go a long way. All debts paid. A brand new Jeep, a Rubicon, in fact. Yeah. A house paid. Shoot, a new house could be bought. Retirement guaranteed. You would be quite the benefactor with such a sum. You could help a lot of people, couldn't you? Maybe even feed a small nation. Suddenly you understand this is an opportunity of a lifetime. So now take your pick, the host exclaims. Just choose one option and all the money is yours. The price is right. A deep voice from behind the curtain begins to read the list. Put your children up for adoption. Become a prostitute for a week. Revoke your American citizenship. Abandon your church. Abandon your family. Kill a stranger. Leave your partner or spouse. That's the list, the host proclaims. Now make your choice. The theme music begins. The audience is quiet. Your heart is racing. You have a choice to make. No one can help you. You're on stage. The decision is yours alone. No one can tell you what to pick. So what do you do? What do you do? I can tell you what your neighbors would do. In a recent poll, they gave their answers. In a book written by James Patterson entitled The Day America Told the Truth, a national survey was conducted where a random sampling of adults were asked the same questions. What would you give up for $10 million? You want to know what they answered? 7% said they would murder someone. Think about that for a moment. If the money is the gauge of your heart, then this study revealed that money is on the hearts of many Americans. In exchange for $10 million, 25%, 1/4 of the population would abandon their family. 25% would abandon their church. 23% would sell their bodies sexually for 1 week. 16% would give up their American citizenship. 16% would give up their spouse or partner. 3% would give up their children. Even more revealing than what Americans would do for $10 million is that most Americans would do something. 2/3 of adults polled, 2/3, agree to at least one, sometimes several of the options. The majority, in other words, would not leave the stage empty-handed. They would pay the price to own the wheelbarrow. So what would you do? Or let me reframe that question in a different way. What are you doing? Okay, I can read your thoughts. You're thinking, get real, Steve. I've never had a shot at $10 million. How does this really relate to me today? With an income that barely makes ends meet. But perhaps you haven't had $10 million. But what about 1,000? What about 100? What about $10? The amount may not be the same, but the choices always are. Which makes the choices all the more disturbing, doesn't it? Some are willing to give up their family, their faith, their morals for far less than $10 million. And today in our gospel, Jesus has a word for that. It's called greed. Oh, I know. We don't like that word. And this parable of the greedy servant stands as a reminder for all of us to place things in its proper place. Keep in mind, greed isn't measured by the amount of possessions you have, but by the practice of measuring your life by your possessions. Did you hear that? Greed isn't measured by the possessions you have, but by the practice of measuring your life by your possessions. Greed tricks us into believing you got a lot, you're worth a lot. You've got a little, you're worth a little. And the consequence of such philosophy is predictable, and Jesus knew this. And that is why he cautions us against all kinds of greed in our gospel this morning. Greed wears many, many faces. Greed is relative. Greed is not defined by what something costs. It is measured by what it is costing you. Back in 1989, I took a group of 40 youth down to the Yucatan Peninsula in a small town called Chubarná, Puerto. This was a community that was ravaged by Hurricane Gilbert in 1988. The storm surge was 20 feet, and most of the Yucatan Peninsula was completely destroyed in that hurricane. The 40 of us raised money, and through an organization called Mano Amiga, we went to this small fishing village to help repair their homes for those who had lost everything. One family I will never forget as long as I live. They lived in a 9x9 dwelling. It was a 9x9 concrete block house, one room dwelling. Their bathroom was a hole behind some shrubs, and their kitchen was an open fire just outside the front doorway to the house. They had no roof on their home. It was destroyed in the hurricane 9 months earlier. They covered themselves with cardboard at night so they could stay as dry as they could and protected from the elements. When I told this family, 6 in this family lived in this dwelling, which was no larger than, about half the size of this chancel, that we were going to repair their home and put on a solid roof, the man fell to his knees and he wept and thanked us and told us in Spanish, "Estás viajando, ángeles de sede del norte," which basically means, "You're traveling angels from the north." But it didn't stop there. The father motioned to his oldest son and said something I couldn't hear. The son went to one of the corners of the dirt-floored dwelling and started digging up with his hands. After removing about 6 inches of dirt, he pulled up a cigar box. And in that cigar box was all the money this man had. All the money, which was 9 pesos. That's all the money this guy had, which back in 1989 equated to approximately $3. The son took the 9 pesos, ran out of the house, and after about 30 minutes returned with 3 ice-cold Coca-Colas in a bottle, one for each of the 3 adult chaperones. Now think about that for a moment. This man was so overjoyed, he gave everything he had, everything, 9 pesos, so that I and the other 2 chaperones might have a cold Coke on that very hot afternoon. It was the most expensive Coca-Cola I have ever drank in my entire life. It was literally a $10 million Coke. To say no would have been insulting. To drink it was more than refreshing physically, it was refreshing spiritually. I tell this story because this man understood his value. He understood what was important and what wasn't important in life. The 9 pesos were just that. Pesos which in turn could be used to thank 3 strangers that he called angels from the north. Such is the point that Jesus is making in the parable of the portfolio, or the parable of greed. Seems that a fellow made a windful profit off an investment. The land produced a bumper crop. He found himself with excess cash and an enviable question: what am I going to do with all of this money? Doesn't take him long to decide. He will save it. He will find a way to store it in a cigar box in his dirt floor, so at some point he might be able to live the good life, whatever that means. His plan? Accumulate. Accumulate more. His aim? Wine, dine, shine, and recline. Move to the Sun Belt. Play golf. Kick back. Relax. But that never happens. It never happens. The man dies. And another voice is heard. The voice of God. It's a difficult gospel for me to read and hear. But God says to him, "You foolish man. You foolish man." On earth, this man is respected. He is honored with a nice funeral, a mahogany casket, black suits fill the auditorium, but in the front row, in the front pew, his family already starts to bicker about their dad's estate. Foolish man, God declares. Who will get those things that have you been preparing yourself for? The man literally spent a lifetime building a house of cards. He didn't see the storm coming. And now the wind has blown. But the storm isn't the only thing he didn't see. He never saw God. Do you hear that? He never saw God. Notice the man's first words after his capital gains. What will I do? He went to the wrong place and asked the wrong question. What if instead he went to God and said, "What would you have me do for you? How can I be a witness for you? How can I help you better this world?" The man's foolishness, and listen very carefully, The man's foolishness is not that he planned for the future. His foolishness was found in that his plan did not include God. Maybe I'm not explaining myself very well, so I'm going to do it Dwayne Davis here, okay? Let me try to explain it in a different way. I love it when he does that. Imagine, I guess it could be a Judge Judy too, I just thought of it. She always does this. Imagine that you hire someone to care for your home while you're away on vacation. You leave this person the keys, some money, some instructions, and you leave saying that you'll return on Sunday evening. When you return, you find that your house has been painted purple. The locks have all been changed. So you ring the doorbell. The house sitter answers the door. Before you can say anything, this person escorts you in proclaiming, "Look how I decorated my house." The fireplace has now been replaced with an indoor waterfall. Carpet has been replaced with pink tile. Portraits of Elvis on black velvet are on the walls. This isn't your house. It's mine. Those aren't your possessions, God reminds us. They are mine. The Lord owns the world and everything in it. The heavens and the highest heavens are God's. God's foremost rule of finance is this. Foremost rule in finance is this. We own nothing. We are managers. We are house sitters, not owners. Stewards, not landlords. Maintenance people, not proprietors. Our money is not ours, it's God's. This man, however, gave no thought to that. Please note, and I'm going to ask you again, note, Jesus doesn't criticize the man's affluence. He criticizes his arrogance. The rich man's words testify to his own priority. This is what I will do. I will tear down. I will store. Then I can say to myself, I have enough good things. When I taught elementary school, yep, I did. I taught 5th grade in the inner city of St. Paul before going to seminary. I would ask them to define the parts of speech I and mine, and they would answer aggressive pronouns. The rich man aggressively was self-centered. His world was fenced in by himself. He was blind. He didn't see God. He didn't see others. He only saw self. Foolish man, God says. Tonight, your life will be taken away from you. Strange, isn't it? This man had enough common sense to acquire wealth, but not enough common sense to get ready for eternity. Something I can tell you, we don't know what today will bring. The shootings in El Paso, the shootings in Dayton, Ohio this morning demonstrate that. We only have right now. As you know, I work in hospice. And one of the things that the hospice patients always ask me, what difference does it make what I do now? What hope is there? And I always say to them, none of us, none of you have the promise of tonight. The only promise you have is right now, this moment, and how you choose to make a difference right here, right now, with those around you. The question is, will you? We often make that mistake. I mean, it's not like as if God keeps the future a secret. As I said, working in hospice reminds me every single day. Every year I literally watch 2,500 individuals leave this world for the next. You don't have to work in hospice, but every cemetery should be a reminder everyone dies. One visit to a funeral should convince us we don't take anything with us. Hearses pull no U-Hauls. Dead men push no $10 million wheelbarrows. Oh, the game show was pretend. But sadly, the facts are real. Each of you are on the stage called life. You've been given a prize worth more than silver or gold. A prize given by the blood of the Lamb. The stakes are very high, very high. Is the price right? Amen.